talking about the UI a bit, because it's not just UI. And one of the fundamental things we have in our portfolio is the Tanzu Hub.
Uh-huh.
And the hub it's a basic platform layer underneath the application platform and other services that we have in our portfolio that allows you to then correlate everything from all of the services running on top of it. So think about hub is the basic fundamental layer, and then you have Cloud Foundry application platform, or if you have Kubernetes, like Tanzu platform for Kubernetes or Tanzu platform for Cloud Foundry, or if you have data services that are running, or if you have catalog with external applications that are running, or if you have brownfield Spring applications that are running as part of that, what you will have in the hub is a consolidation of information and also that differentiation between the different personas for the entire Tanzu portfolio. The reason
Ah.
I'm saying a lot about the hub is because that's the experience. When we talk about experience for both personas, that's where you
Mm-hmm.
will have your UI for everything. You will be able to take a look on the path from the code to the build, what is in the build, how the build looks like, how many CVEs do I have in the build. And then you can take a look on the space and what are the capabilities that are part of the space and what are the components that are running. What's the network topology for the connectivity between the different components in the space. So all of those things that we've mentioned are coming into the Tanzu Hub as the main user experience layer.
Yeah. So what I guess what I'm scratching my head about, literally I'm scratching my head, is so the developer experience is meant to be so simple. So I understand Tanzu Hub from an operations persona where they're managing lots of different spaces, they're managing the underlying infrastructure. I even understand it like maybe there's a management persona who needs to see cost and performance across all the different places applications are deployed. But I think what I don't understand is a developer, if they're meant to have such a simple experience and such a simple, barely need to interact with any of the infrastructure, why they would need something like Tanzu Hub.
Let's talk about let's think about what are the use cases that developer cares about when the application is
Uh-huh.
already committed. He cares about logs. He cares about
Okay.
troubleshooting the application side of things, right? He wants to
Uh-huh.
know maybe the architecture and like the form of the application. He wants to
Uh-huh.
know vulnerabilities that are related into pieces of code he will need to change,
Uh-huh.
right? Health state, test.
Can I?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can keep going. There's a lot of things that a developer should have a dashboard of the application to look at. Now,
Okay.
again, we've talked about a lot of different personas without talking about the personas problem, because it is another thing that we need to talk about. There's a lot of different teams and personas in this path to
Mm-hmm.
production, and it's not going to be the same for every organization, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we say dev, is it like, what kind of a dev is it? Is it a dev that actually does also an application operations work? Because at some organization that
Mm-hmm.
will be the case. Or is it a dev that the only thing he needs to do is to check out his code and that's it? He doesn't like care about
Mm-hmm.
anything else because he has someone else in the team that is responsible for the application operations. So what I'm trying to say is this view is for the dev support. Let's call it dev support, or let's call it
Uh-huh.
application operations, right? AppOps.
Okay.
And those are the things that the application operations teams cares about. What is the service? How is the service connected into the application? What is the build that is running right now? What's the revision of the build that is running right now? Even what's the commit? What's the commit ID, the last commit ID in production? And what's the last commit ID that you have in the code? And is it similar? Like if there's a gap. That's also
Uh-huh.
the UI, the hub, is also the place that you have the capability to connect the dots between the dev, the sec, and the ops. So we are talking a lot about DevOps and DevSecOps. How do you connect that loop together under the same experience, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly the hub. The hub knows about what's running. It knows about what's the branch, the git and the commit that is running right now, and he also knows about what's the repo and what's the code, and if it like what's the build, everything inside that path. And now I can alert. I can say to my customer, you know what, you're running something in production that has 50 vulnerabilities, but the new revision that was just being built by the build service automatically has 30 vulnerabilities. Do you want to roll upgrade it into a space? That's it. And we didn't got into like the values for the operations, because what we've talked about right now is the path to production, right? Which
Uh-huh.
is basically how do we support that development process. We also have additional pillars in our strategy and portfolio that also helps the operation side of you.
I don't. Before we move on, I'm not sure I did this Tanzu Hub justice on the board. So
Okay.
it's a UI that displays many dimensions, is what I wrote, which I don't not sure that does it justice.
So
And then what the dev sees, and I was maybe like what the app operation sees,
yeah,
what an ops person sees, like maybe listing out some things.
I think that what we need to know about the hub is it's the center of the universe for Tanzu. So it's definitely not enough justice. But when
No.
you think about where do you see all of the things? We've talked about a lot of things, right?
Uh-huh.
The Tanzu portfolio has a lot of things inside of that, a lot of services, a lot of different like capabilities that we bring to our customers. Where do you
Uh-huh.
see everything comes together? Where do you see
Mm-hmm.
that, because again, we've talked about the path to production, right? We've talked about the developer side of you or the developer experience from
Mm-hmm.
engaging with this platform, application platform. But
Mm-hmm.
what about everything you need to make this path happens, right? You need Kubernetes
Mm-hmm.
clusters. You need security identity management. You need management. You need so many like backup, data protection, policies. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
keep going on and on and on, right? All of those
Mm-hmm.
things are operational capabilities that we bring as part of Tanzu, and those are part of the hub as the UI for that. Now, again, everything in Tanzu has a CLI, an API, and a UI. So you can also
Mm-hmm.
do the operation side with a GitOps fashion, creating clusters and managing clusters and everything else. But if you want to use a UI, hub is the center of everything where you actually do that.
Okay. Tanzu Hub is the center of the world.
Yes.
Yes, it
And
does make sense. Just like here, when it's like so much complexity, like I feel like it does so much, and words just kind of are falling flat for me in terms of getting it. But I like Tanzu Hub as the center of the universe.
the center of the Tanzu universe.
Okay.
And now the reason I'm saying that is because Tanzu Hub is also like it's based on GraphQL, and it has the
Uh-huh.
capability to create the relationships between the different objects and components. One key aspect that we've talked about is that Tanzu is basically focusing on the app, right? How do you know what's an app? Whitney, what's an application? What is an application? What is an
Oh,
application?
you're really asking.
I really ask.
I guess in terms of uh, the smallest amount of code that can do a discrete thing, but that's
But that's fine. No,
yeah,
that's okay. That's okay. That's a small
that's
microservice
all.
or a small
Mm-hmm.
application. It's part of something bigger, right? Like eventually,
Yeah, we're
an application is something which is meaningful for the business that has a business outcome. That's my
okay.
right.
Okay, I
Like
like that. Yeah.
the small application or the piece of application that is a standalone is important, but is not as important as everything comes together into a business value, right? Because again, if we go back like to the beginning of the call, the business is what matters, right? So when you want to take a look on a business application, right? When you want to
Mm-hmm.
understand what's the health state of a business app, when you want to understand what are the pieces of that business application, when you want to
Mm-hmm.
measure that business application upon something to make sure that your business is healthy, right? When you want to secure that business application because you have regulations that is all the time connected into a specific business line, right? A specific business application. You need something that knows the context, that can connect and correlate the different pieces into a single view, into a single like container, logical container of the business application. And the hub allows us
Mhm.
to do that. It allows us to connect the dots between the different components into something which is meaningful on the business side.
So is it, and it's customizable too, based on what you want a persona to see. So, so of all the layers of complexity, it's helping you understand connections. It's like the integration point for many different personas for all the.
Yeah, it's the integration points for personas and the integration points for all of our services, for all of the Tanzu services. And again,
Mhm.
that's where everything happens, right? That's where you will see the connection between the code, the build, the run, and the services and other things. So again, we've just started the conversation about Tanzu. We took
Uh-huh.
like we took the four first pillars of the
Uh-huh.
strategy, which is the build, bind, deploy, and update, right?
Uh-huh.
And when you go further down the line into like the operational world, when you go right on the pipeline into the production world, there's a
Mhm.
lot of values and capabilities that we are bringing for the platform engineers and the operators and everybody else that are part of that hub UI experience. Observability, cost management, security, right? Someone needs
Mhm.
to secure all of those things.
Mhm.
So everything comes to play in the hub eventually. Just
I like somebody's the hero of everything. That's
yeah,
fun.
I know. You like security. So a question,
I do
right?
it.
How
Uh-huh.
many S bombs do you have in a pipeline of one application?
Oh no, you have so many. Like every time anything happens, you have a new S phone.
Right. So
Yeah.
how do you know? How do you connect the dots? How do you correlate between the SBOM of the code, which is built on a repo, the SBOM of
Uh-huh.
the build, which happens in the build process, the SBOM of the
Uh-huh.
registry when it's like at rest, and the image that is deployed and the image that is running? How do you correlate everything? How do you make sure that it's like you have one single pane of glass for security, right? For security for an app,
Yeah.
not anything, just for a specific application. Now another thing is, because we are focusing on the application layer, we know what's the business criticality for that specific app. Like we know how critical it is. We know that if you have a critical vulnerability for a marketing landing page, is not equivalent for a
Uh-huh.
vulnerability in a core system
Yeah.
or something that like part of your business. So we can also do the risk analysis and the risk management better.
Ah.
We can flash out things that you like the way that you need to mitigate, right? We know, because because we also have close relationship as part of like Tanzu for Spring, we know that what you need to do to mitigate different vulnerabilities. We know what kind of dependencies you need to use to be aligned with best practices, to be in the latest and greatest things, to mitigate also the operational gaps that you have. So
So as a customer, the opinions, maybe I can't choose like what other open source tools are underneath in terms of opinions, but I can incorporate opinions like this is a business critical application that needs to always be up versus this is our marketing landing page, which is it's okay. Like so I can incorporate like things that are very important to my business, those sorts of opinions into the platform. There's room for that.
you will be
Cool.
able in the hub to decide what is a business critical application for you, and you can
Mm-hmm.
group according to your business logic. Of course, we will also gonna help, right? We will identify automatically what is an application, what are the relationship, what are the like pieces that is part of that. But we will also allow you to add information as a customer to then differentiate in the risk management and in the operational process and other things, to differentiate between what's matter and what's not. Eventually, when you're running thousands of applications, and that's our customers, they're running thousands of applications. Think about like the challenges we've started with, right? Think about those challenges for thousands of applications. They won't be able to manage 1 million CVEs because that's what they
Yeah.
have, 1 million CVEs. They will need to know what are the top 5 or 10 they need to address today, and they will need to know how to address them.
And that's again comes back to the consistency thing that we talked about at the very beginning too, where even though there are thousands of applications, if it's all built, if there's a CVE and they're all built on the same foundations, that's a much easier problem than if there's a CVE and every team's kind of making up their own way of doing things.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's, again, the most important part, because of the sheer amount of moving parts that you have, number of applications, number of microservices, number of containers. The most important part is consistency. If you will remove the snowflakes, and you will have one way, and we call that the golden path. If you will have a golden path into production, that you can then make sure that all the different snowflakes are consolidated into, that single golden path to production allows you to get the consistency to then simplify everything else, right? Simplify the way that you operate, simplify the way that you secure, simplify the way that you iterate. So eventually that's what we are trying to do. And we've started the conversation with what is an application platform, or what is Tanzu, right? So Tanzu is an application platform that allows you to achieve that consistency. If you use an application platform, you will get that consistency in the golden path to production with your applications.
So should I write Tanzu platform? Should we capture this?
We can capture, like, I think you wrote that, like, the first thing is the accelerate application path to production. That accelerate the path to production. You couldn't achieve that without consistency, without opinions, without using something that will allow you to manage that, the action, all the actions that we've talked about, the code, build, deploy, bind, update, all of those things are supporting that, that mission that we have. And all of those different aspects and steps in that path to production, if you get consistency in them, that's how you achieve the acceleration. I think that we also talked about, it's not just accelerating the path, because once you're accelerating the path and you get that consistency, you're automatically reducing risk. Like you're reducing the risk factor, you're reducing the operational overhead, you're enhancing the developer experience, you're reducing the cost of developer onboarding and the first time to commit, you're enabling a lot of like values along that pipeline to a lot of different personas, connecting the dots between the personas. And I think that also something which is super important. So like in 40,000 feet, I think that's the values. Again, we just scratched the surface. We talked about the first layer of the Tanzu platform, which is just the first layer, right? Underneath that, there's a lot more, but we can get to that in additional sessions.
We have a little room. I feel like you were starting to talk about the experience from operations. Yeah, maybe day 2 operations. So
I think we can wrap up. We can wrap up with updates, just because we are in the path and we talked about the code, build, deploy, and bind. We can talk about update or scale, but that's again part of the platform. Underneath the platform, there's a lot of things that we won't get into today, I guess. But I think that update is a good connection between the application path to production and then what comes underneath on the operations and infrastructure side. When we talk about update, or the fifth bullet, is we are talking about how do you manage that application after the deployment. So what's the day 2? On the day 2 of update, you can think about things that you need to do for the application. You need to upgrade the application. You need to scale the application. You need to maintain the application from different reasons. You maybe need to move it to somewhere else. So update is all the different actions that an application operations team will do, by the way, for that application maintenance.
Will you quickly fire off those verbs again?
Yeah. So
Scale.
yeah, let's talk. Yeah, you can start with a scale, upgrade, stop, start, right? Like
Yeah.
restart,
Migrate. Yeah.
stop, start. Yeah.
Migrate.
That's another thing, but that's not an action. So
Okay.
upgrade, stop, start, and restart are things that you can change upgrade to promote. I'm sorry, I'm making you like delete and write again.
No.
But you instead of upgrade, let's call it promote, because eventually when you're pushing the app into the dev and then you're promoting it to stage and then production, right? Restart the application if you need to, or restage it, just making sure that the application will spin out in a different availability zone or availability target in App Engine, right? Those are the things that an application operations team can do after the effect. Now, again, we can get into scenarios, but it's easy. Like if you need more resources for the application, you can either auto scale or manual scale. Auto scale based on resources, or manual scale because today is something special. It's like Black Friday and everybody's gonna get in and buy something, right? And so scale is something that is super important for customers. Stop, start, and upgrade or promote. It's like you want to have a second revision for your app. You have two different availability targets, so two instances of your application. You want to drain one of them, so make sure nobody's like all the connections are being drained, and then stop the application, upgrade this application, and then divert the traffic back, right? So basically A/B scenario. And stop. So that's stop and start. Those are the things that you can do. Promote, again, it's easy. Just promote the code from different environments, making sure that each environment will have the specific capabilities and configuration and policies for this environment, right? Because the dev environment doesn't have the same policies and configuration as the production one. So that's update. I think that's pretty much it for the update application.
Awesome. And is that which persona is worried about? That seems more operations based, or is a developer worried about these things?
Again, sorry, what?
Which persona is the developer concerned about any of these things, or is this mostly operations facing?
So I think in this case it's more an application operations team or platform engineers, or it depends, right? It depends on the organization, but that's not infrastructure. So if I'm trying to decouple what, like, the next layer down, right, of the platform engineer or the infrastructure side, that will be all the things that is cluster related, like where the cluster is going to be created, how many nodes the cluster will have, securing the cluster, managing the cluster, spinning up multiple cluster for high availability, deploying a cluster on clouds or on-prem, securing the networking stack. Like, that's kind of a level down. So when we will get into the 3 R's or the 4 R's, right, of Tanzu, and that's where we are getting into more the operation side, like one level down underneath this platform. And everything now, what's the beautiful thing about this slide board? Everything here is Cloud Foundry or Kubernetes.
Yeah. That's one thing. And we actually we've said the word platform quite a few times, so we haven't written the word platform here, which maybe we want to write about what Tanzu is in relation to platforms.
Yeah, I think we should. Like what we just mentioned here, that's an application platform, right? Like an application platform allows you to commit a code and get a running workload with everything that the workload needs to run. Now, everything that the workload needs to run is a lot of different things, and it depends on the workload. So in this case, the way that we solve that is with an application engine that allows you to basically create a workload placement engine based on parameters. But that's an application platform. It's end-to-end, code to production, with everything inside of that. Now, there's again, a lot of different capabilities that we haven't mentioned yet. We've sticked into like the first layer of Tanzu, which is the application platform. There's a lot underneath to support that Tanzu platform that we've just mentioned.